was just kind of wandering off in the middle of dinner for a little while, why they seemed a little happier when they came back. I think there were a lot of conversations like that the first year of legalization. And I think that needs to happen more and more. And as it does, people will start to be aware of these issues as long as we keep bringing them up and keep making people aware of them.
I think that that's an excellent point. And I think it's really timely, post Thanksgiving that we're having this conversation, but because I can tell you that, for all the problems that this industry has, for all the challenges we've had in the last year, for all the awkwardness, because that's really what it comes down to, we are seeing those shifts, and they are exactly for that reason, because people continue to have the conversation. I agree that we need to continue making these issues come to light. We need to continue talking about them in circles that are not echo chambers, and having them with people that maybe we don't always agree with in a way that's constructive. And I'm seeing that at a grassroots level with a lot of SheCann members. We had members, who really took Thanksgiving as an opportunity to talk openly about how they use this as medicine. And they've seen their persistence in that conversation and their honesty and their willingness to educate and to listen without being evangelical about it, pay off. Yeah. We had a member who has been using medical cannabis for about 6 months, and both her mother-in-law and her partner were this weekend willing to try the topical that she had made. And they were overwhelmed. And her mother-in-law sent her a text message, which she screenshot, saying, "Thank you so much. I haven't had relief from my eczema like this in as long as I can remember." These were people that previously, had no interest in cannabis, had no belief that it had any value medically or recreationally. And I think that you're right. It's about keeping it part of the conversation. And if enough people are having those conversations, it creates critical mass. And that's one thing that we don't need to wait to do. We can just continue doing it. I've said, for me, prior to legalization, I feel like the cannabis industry and cannabis in general, was viewed upon potentially, especially by investors and those with, financial interests, as this beautiful like baby, and everybody wanted to buy the baby things, and we all loved the baby and all the potential of the baby, and the baby was going to go to Harvard, and the baby was going to bring it all home. And, I think a year out, that baby is an adolescent. That baby is an awkward, indignant, rebellious, underachieving adolescent, and nobody wants to be around it, and nobody wants to handle it, and they're all just throwing up their hands at all these hopes and dreams that they had, put on this thing, and it's not happening. And I'm looking at it going, yeah, but there's some great stuff in there. And we're going to have to ride it out, and we're going to have to put in some rules, and we're going to have to shake it up, and maybe we have to send them to boarding school. But at the same time, this is a stage like anything else, and we'll get through it. And it's not for the faint of heart, and there'll be blood in the streets, and there'll be a lot of disenchantment. But what do? You keep having the conversations.
Well, it's that this will be an awkward analogy, because that was a very disturbing really all that ran through my head once you started talking about the baby and everybody wanted to have the baby was the illicit market that also thought it was going to be born, that was not. And so my brain went some very disturbing places there, because I think that's this industry. It's important. I love that analogy, but it's important that people really understand that this industry wasn't new. Being able to trade on the stock market was new, but not the industry itself, not by a long shot. And I think that was the problem, was we created a second industry. We saw something similar in Washington, but they very quickly sort of started bringing in all of those producers and processors. And what Washington has as a legal system now looks very much like what Vancouver's dispensary system looked like when it was illegal. So it's, there's hope that it can change and get better, but I really think there has not been a recognition yet that there was an existing market. There are reasons to bring that existing market in. And I'm hoping as the stigma falls, this idea that they're all criminals really kind of goes away, because it's really not true, particularly in certain communities where it kind of became a way of life, and it was something that was sort of normal. And everybody in every neighborhood kind of had somebody that grew and paid their truck payments that way. BC was very different than Pickle Lake, Ontario, for example. So there are different pains in different places, and none of that's really been addressed by anybody. The NDP kind of like pulled a slow rollout, hoping for micro licenses to come quickly, but really haven't done anything. There's still a lot to fix. And I think on that extremely awkward note, we will end this awkward podcast, because I believe we're also over time. Ashleigh, you and I will probably keep talking for like hours.
Yeah, that's one thing we can guarantee. I think, you know what, that's the point, right? Is the conversation is always ongoing, whether it's, between a couple people or whether it's on a national stage. We have to have those conversations. And I agree. I think that, that helps me really expand on that analogy, is that there was another baby that wasn't born. In terms of the transition of the illicit market. And that's something that people need to talk about and they need to be aware of, because a lot of the mismanaged expectation comes from a fundamental lack of understanding of just exactly how cannabis in Canada has existed, long before it was traded on the TSX. So, thank you so much for today. As always, it's a pleasure and an honor. And, I'm the informal president of the Jamie Shaw Fan Club. So I will be, taking signups for that and collecting membership fees, maybe even, so we can start a consumer lobby.
That consumer lobby would be awesome. That would be good. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you very much, Ashleigh. Have a good night.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.